Good morning, everybody. Today is Monday, November the 16th, and we're going to be continuing with multiplication, but today we're going to be talking about multiplication with arrays. This is one of my favorite multiplication strategies because I look for arrays out in the real world. Every time that I'm driving by, I'm looking for examples of arrays that I see in our world today. So hopefully you will enjoy arrays as much as I do and love learning about them. So as we get started today, we're going to talk about arrays and how we can use that to solve multiplication problems. We're learning this so that we can quickly find a total number when there is equal groups, and we're going to know that we're successful when we can work through the problems even when they're hard, and we can find the number in all by multiplying the number of rows and columns in an array. And you can use models and or drawings to show an array to represent a multiplication sentence. So let's just jump right in, and we're going to be talking about arrays. Hooray for today. So our learning objective is we are learning to represent multiplication with arrays. So what I would like for you to do is I'd like for you to look at this picture, and I want you to think about what you notice and about what you wonder. So go ahead and pause your video and come up with some thoughts about what you notice and what you wonder. Well, if you all know me, the first thing I notice is all the pretty colors that I see on the screen. Um, and I'm looking at the variety of that. So that's one of the things I noticed. But then I start looking at it mathematically and I start wondering, well, how many are all together? Or how many are in each row? What represents the rows or what represents the columns? Because I'm thinking mathematically at this point. So as you looked at that picture, I hope you come up with some of your own ideas about what you noticed and what you still wonder. And some of the things that I want you to think about is rows and columns, because now that we're talking about arrays, we're thinking of how many rows, how many columns. Just like when we were talking about groups of equal items last week, we were talking about how many groups and how many in each group. So this time we're going to be thinking of rows and columns when we're thinking of an array. And the first thing that's going to be very important to you is knowing what represents the rows and what represents the columns. So if I'm thinking of rows, I'm going to think of the horizontal row going from left to right. So I would be looking down this way and counting how many rows I have because I'm looking at what each row represents. So I would have 1, 2, 3 rows in this problem. And Miss Bays is definitely having trouble with her computer today because it's not wanting to cooperate with me. So the next thing that we're going to look at is the columns. How many columns do we have? Now remember, we looked horizontally for our rows. It's just like in a movie theater. When we go to a movie theater or to the Mountain Art Center when we go to watch things there, we are looking for our rows, and then each seat represents how many are in each row. So that would be the same thing here. So our rows are 3. Now we're going to be thinking about the columns. We're thinking vertically. What's going up and down? So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. How could I take this information and write it into a multiplication sentence? Now remember, we're thinking like we did last week. We had groups and the number in each group, or the items in each group. And we always have the group number first. Which one do you think is going to go first here? If you said rows, then you're exactly right. We're going to talk about the rows first. So we're going to have 3 times 6. And if I'm thinking about how I could write a repeated addition sentence for that, what number is going to be repeated and how many times is it going to be repeated? So I'm saying 3 rows of 6. In this case, It is 6 that's going to be repeated. And how many times should I see 6 in my repeated addition sentence? You're exactly right. I should see it 3 times. So I should see 6 plus 6 plus 6. And in this case, my answer, I can easily find it by either counting all together how many, or I could count by my sixes. So 6 plus 6 plus 6, because I have 3 groups of 6 or 3 rows of 6. So I can relate this back to my grouping and do my repeated addition sentence. So 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 6 more is 18. Or I could just count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just like you would if you were learning to count at the beginning. So there are multiple ways to get the answer again, just like there was when we were doing our grouping. Here Miss Base goes again with donuts. Some of you said you liked donuts. Some of you said you didn't. I was actually pretty shocked for those people that said they didn't like donuts last time. I want you to think about again, what do you notice in this problem and what do you wonder? What do you notice and what do you wonder? I want you to pause the video and think about that just a few seconds. Again, I noticed all the different colors, wondering what the flavors were of these donuts. So there's all kinds of things I noticed. And then I start wondering, how many donuts are there altogether? How many chocolate are there? I just had all kinds of questions here. So hopefully you came up with some good questions and some good things that you noticed about them. So let's just jump right in and start thinking mathematically. And again, we're going to be thinking about how many rows and how many columns that we see here. So remember that we're thinking about rows being represented horizontally. So if it's going from left to right, then that's going to be our rows. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to come up here and go ahead and put 4 for my rows. And then I'm going to do the same thing with columns, except for I'm going to be going this way to count vertically. I want to count down. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 for columns. So I have 4 rows and 4 columns. How could I write a multiplication sentence for that? Yes, you're exactly right. It's going to be 4 times 4. And then with this case, we have the same number each time. So I'm going to do 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 to get my repeated addition sentence. Makes it easier when the numbers are the same. Then I don't have to think about it as much, do I? So it's going to be 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 to get the answer to this problem. Now, how would I figure out what the answer is here? I could do repeated addition, like the 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 4 more is 12, plus 4 more is 16. Some of you may do 4 plus 4 is 8, so I know I've got 2 more 4s, it's going to be 8 also, and then 8 plus 8 is 16. I had somebody thinking like that last week, and that definitely works as well. I love to hear the different thoughts that you have about how you're putting numbers together. And then I could just count all of them all together. If I wasn't sure, I could count by my ones. So I could start here and count by my ones to get all the way down here to also get 16. So there again, there's multiple ways to get the answer using different strategies like repeated addition, like multiplication in groups, like multiplication in arrays. So I'm putting this picture up for you so that you understand what represents rows and what represents columns. I think it's a pretty good visual as to in regards to what we're using to determine how many rows we have and how many columns we have. So remember that in this case, we're looking at everything that's going horizontal from left to right. And if I'm going from left to right, then I know that I'm counting my rows. So I have 3 rows of 2 columns. So 1, 2 to get my columns. So this is just the start of our lessons on arrays, and I'm pretty excited. There's a couple of things that you're going to be doing this week that you're going to be really excited about. So I hope you enjoy these lessons and start thinking about how you can use that to help you with multiplication. Everybody have a great day. On my video, I want you to, or on my lesson, I'm sorry, I want you to comment, where might you see arrays in the real world? Those people who comment will get credit for watching the video. Those people who do not make a comment will not get credit for the video and will not be able to be in the drawing for this week's completing all work. So make sure that you're making those comments in that section. So I want you to decide where in the real world would you see arrays.